Welcome in to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. A podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. It's time to flock up. The New Orleans Pelicans Podcast starts right now.
It's a brand new work week, the first full week of March, and we welcome you to another edition of the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. I'm Gus Kattengell. As always, we appreciate you for tuning us in, and we got a lot to get into today. Not as many games early in the week. We got 2 over the weekend, but what took place before this past weekend was solid. Pels get that revenge game over the Pacers, 129-102, get the final there, thanks to 48 first quarter points. That's what it sounded like from Ty Graffinini and the Pelicans Radio Network.
Ingram, this is a clear out. Ingram, doubled, fall away baseline jumper.
Oh, have some.
You got to be kidding me.
Have some. And the Pelicans are a team that obviously says, you know what you saw Wednesday was not us.
Rebound Ingram.
Well, Indy's just going to chuck up threes until they make some.
Ingram coast to coast.
Oh, yeah. King finger roll. He gets the elbow in Mathurin's face, I think. Mathurin took the worst of that one because I think Brandon Ingram gets him with the chicken wing in the face, but we don't care. That's a lay-in.
Rick Carlisle just took another timeout, and this place is fired up. Z shovels out to Trey, wide open, left wing three. Record!
Oh, that is smart. That's smart ball. That's smart basketball.
Ingram one-on-one with Siakam. Game clock at 2. Spins left. Hook it over to Trey.
Looky here.
Deep left wing.
Looky here. Looky here.
At the buzzer.
Brandon Ingram draws the double team. Finds the wide open Kenneth Murphy III for what he does.
5 made threes for Murphy. 23 points overall. Ingram splits defenders.
Oh,
impossible
no.
shot! Impossible shot! Scooping lefty layup. That hit the top of the backboard with English and went down. Lefty.
Brandon Ingram with the English muffin.
Ingram weaves through traffic. Shot fake on Turner.
Oh, he passed it to himself.
He passed it to himself.
Passed it to himself. You saw that coming. Brandon Ingram is deep in the bag.
Off the backboard and a dunk. Matt Ryan just got his pocket picked. And then Jose steals it right back. GTA. Leave it for Hawk. Right wing 3. Boom!
Yes, sir. Jose doing what he does. Comes up with the steal and the assist.
I want 140.
Head coach Willie Green on the team's 36th win of the season.
We did a great job of setting the tone from the start of the game. B.I. was incredible. His performance, he set the tone on both ends of the floor. And it was just fun to watch. It was fun to watch him play with that force, that pace, the confidence that he had on the floor, and his teammates all rallied behind him. So he was incredible. He set the tone, and collectively it was a great rebounding game for us in terms of from the first game to the second game. Great rebound and great turnaround for us to be able to come home, get a little rest, and get this win.
Pelicans led by Brandon Ingram's 34 points. Coach on B.I.'s night.
You don't want to take him out the game. Unfortunately, he needs a little rest, but it's like, can you play 30 straight when you're playing like that? And like I said, it's fun to watch. And, last game he had a good game, and then to come back, get some rest, and go right back after it, it was great. And we're all proud of B.I. and the effort and the performance that he displayed tonight.
It was another solid effort by Trey Murphy. 6 3-pointers in the game, 28 points for him. Trey?
I knew eventually it was going to come back. It's law of large numbers. That's really all it is. It's going to go back to where it's supposed to be. So you have your ebbs and flows. You're going to be lower than what your natural mean is, and you might be higher some days. But, you put the work in, you trust your work, and you stay confident, then you're going to get to where you're supposed to be.
Oh, and by the way, Tyrese Halliburton, the Pacers' #1 top player, the All-Star starter, he had no points, 0 points. Coach Willie Green on that.
You guys know he's an excellent playmaker and player. He's an all-star caliber player. And, Herb Jones, his defense on Halliburton, he, in my opinion, that's a first-team all-defensive player on our team. He was everywhere, and he's been doing that all season, the last 3 seasons. And I thought we did a great job of mixing up our coverages, going man, going zone, not allowing them to get to some of their sets, and then matching up the last few seconds of the shot clock.
Herb Jones may have had a little something to do with that here as well. Jim Eichenhofer is going to join us here next. We'll probably dive into that. I assume I see the large number of notes just from that game alone coming up. But, of course, this is kind of started off by letting you know the Pels will take on the Raptors at Toronto tomorrow. Then on Friday, they're at Philly, and they take on the Hawks in a 5 o'clock game on Sunday. 3 straight road games before coming back for 3 straight home games, Cavs, Clippers, and Trailblazers. We'll get into that, but that's your next 6 games as it's time to move on. So Jim Eichenhofer, NewOrleansPelicans.com. Sir, as always, appreciate the time that you come in and give us the knowledge, man. How nice, because you were with us at Wrong Iron, the official team watch party back on Wednesday. Saw the loss, team got it to within 3. That fatigue played into a factor. But did you see 48 first quarter points?
I did not, and I also didn't see only giving up 102 points to the Pacers in that game. The Pacers are the second best offense in the NBA, so that might have been the best demonstration of defense by New Orleans this season. They've had other games where they held teams under 100 points or even under 90 points, but honestly, they were against some of the teams that are really struggling offensively, Portland and Memphis being examples of that. So it was great to see just the Pelicans show a lot of the areas where they've been really good at the defensive end of the floor against one of the best teams in the league. You at that end of the floor, you mentioned Tyrese Halliburton scoreless. Couple stats for you. This is the second straight year that the Pelicans are ranked 6th in defense. And I don't think going into 2 seasons ago we thought, okay, this is going to be a top 10 defensive team, but they really have become that. And this was something that was talked about a lot during practice or after practice yesterday. They've done really well in a lot of the areas that they've tried to focus on. Really the theme, I think, defensively for this team is preventing easy baskets, preventing easy points. And, if you look at some of the rankings, they're number 1 in three-point defense percentage. So they've allowed the lowest three-point percentage by opposing teams. They're 2nd in steals. They're 5th in points allowed. They're 7th in free throw attempts allowed. Now, so I know we've talked about sometimes there's some games where we get a little upset about the officiating, but overall, that's really good that they're ranked that high in keeping other teams off the free throw line. And they're also 10th in fast break points allowed. So if you add up all of those different categories, you can kind of see why they've been able to do so well. And like I said, they're 6th overall in efficiency in points allowed per 100 possessions. So I think, if anything, I try to hammer this point a lot, that we talk a ton about offense, and I don't mean you and I, Gus, and I don't mean New Orleans media. I mean everyone across the basketball spectrum. We focus so much on offense, but defense has been a huge reason why they've moved up to 5th place in the Western Conference right now.
We're going to get to that because they got a lot of help over the weekend, which is always a good thing there as well. And you get a little nervous because obviously every single day, Jim, we're standings watching, we're scoreboard watching, and yet at the same time, there's something you can do and control, but they did get some help there. A few more things, though, the game I definitely want to touch on. You mentioned Halliburton. Look, it's just one of those nights. Obviously, the defense helped on that as well. But I really do love the fact that every single game now, you're hearing either a coach or you're hearing a player like Trey Murphy. They're like, no, this is all pro. Like they're going, I'm not saying out of their way. They're making it be known, hey, there's going to be a soundbite, one way, shape, or form that says this dude's all pro defensive team in the NBA. And I love that. And again, I don't know if he was the 100% reason. Coach thinks so. Other players think so. So that's fine.
Yeah, it was funny. After practice on Sunday, Herb Jones spoke to the media, and someone asked him, what do you think about the fact that your teammates are constantly praising you? They're constantly saying, first team all defense, Herb Jones. And, in typical Herb fashion, he said, I'm not really worried about awards. It's not something I'm focused on. I'll leave that to other people to decide that. I don't think he even really knows or cares like how they determine that or how it's voted upon and stuff like that. So not a surprise to hear her basically say, I'm not really that concerned about individual awards. It was also funny, too, because I should have known this before I started asking Herb questions, that he really doesn't pay attention to anything in terms of media coverage, social media. I don't think he's really on social media at all. But I started asking him about, there's been a push to try to even out the balance between offense and defense. The NBA definitely is looking at the fact that it's, teams are scoring 130, 140 points a lot, which isn't necessarily bad for the game. But I do think that there are fans and even players and even coaches who are saying, things are a little bit out of kilter as far as it's getting so difficult to defend. So what are some of the changes that we can come up with? And I think there's really three things that it kind of boils down to. There's more than this, but the main ones are, do we change the way that we officiate hand checking? Do we allow a little bit more contact from the defense? One idea that this might sound a little bit more revolutionary, do you eliminate 3-pointers from the corner in terms of making the line, instead of in the corners the line is 22 feet, at the rounded part it's 23.9. If you just let that line go out to the sideline at 23.9, there wouldn't be corner threes anymore. So that's an interesting idea. And the last one is right now there's a 3-second defensive violation. If you change that to 5 seconds, you let players have a little bit more time to kind of camp out in the lane, and it would just give them a little bit of a bump and a little bit of an easier way to try to slow down some of these offenses that are so out of control. But it was funny, though, because I when I was asking Herb about some of this, I don't think he really was aware at all that any of this stuff has been discussed. And I mean, he might be the right guy to talk to anyways, because he's doesn't need help at all with rule changes or different. I mean, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I definitely think that if they allowed a little bit more contact on defense, that would benefit him defensively, because it seems like he has gotten a very bad whistle, especially for somebody who's an elite defensive player that people are campaigning to be first team all defense. Maybe after he wins that or gets on that all defensive team, he'll get a little bit more respect day to day from the referees. But just an interesting topic, and but something that I think a lot of the other players have opinions on. But again, no surprise, Herb didn't really have much of an opinion over it, and I don't think he even heard that this is something that the league, I think, is going to talk about during the offseason.
Yeah, I think that's something that I think a lot of people have talked about, right? Where there's the All-Star game, the scoring, and things of that nature, and offense and defense, but it's just so rare to see that. But I still go to that 3-point shot. I don't know how to fix it, or do you want to fix it or not? Do you like it? Because I will tell you that the blender was popping on Monday. I mean, on Friday, obviously, when everybody was knocking down shots, when B.I.'s kissing off the glass. Let's go to Brandon Ingram, man. We touched on it in the podcast on Friday, that what was lost in the loss was a 30-point effort, 13 trips to the free throw line, and we touched on it with JD. I'm like, man, if that's the guy that we can get moving forward, it's going to be pretty interesting, isn't it? I mean, to see him be like that. And Trey Murphy afterwards said he likes aggressive Brandon Ingram, that it does open it up and everything like that nature. We don't see it every game, and I don't know if that's the next step for him to take his game to the next level. But Jim, back-to-back 30-point efforts. 34 is what he had in this last game, 30 the game before that. I know Indiana's not known for it doesn't matter, but we literally talk about this almost every other podcast. When you look at the top teams in the West, when you look at the teams that are being talked about as contenders, they got a guy that drops 30, right? I mean, like, they got a guy that you're like, if he doesn't, he had an off night. Like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, that's a 30 guy. Ant can drop 30. Jokic can drop 30. I can go on and on with those teams. And pick a Clipper, pick a Phoenix Sun. I mean, Booker and Durant can drop 30. We've got to get somebody to where, hey, I'm not saying it's every night, but they're capable of doing that. And I don't know if that's a sign of things to come, but what do you think of Brandon's performance the last two games?
It's interesting because if you go back to last season at the end of the regular season, I think he had one of the best stretches of his career. And it looks like he's kind of headed in that direction right now, where he's going to close out the regular season really strong. If anything, I think one of the reasons why he didn't get as much attention or respect for how he played last year at the end of March and April was because literally the last game of the regular season, the Pelicans lose to Minnesota, and they end up dropping down to the 9 seed. I mean, BI had been a huge reason why they had a really good stretch right before that.
Yeah.
I think they won maybe 9 of 12. He had a stretch in March where he was getting 30-plus points consistently. So he does seem to be kind of ramping up to back to that form that we saw at the end of last season. And, I mean, if he's able to continue to play the way that he has, it's definitely going to bode really well for the Pelicans being able to continue to stay where they are in the Western Conference and hopefully – end the regular season really well as they get ready for the playoffs.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to kind of see where that goes on as well, too, because you're seeing everybody kind of feed off of him and play off of him as well.
And by the way, too, you mentioned the weekend that the Pelicans had. I don't know if you could ask for a better weekend in terms of, Friday was amazing. It was one of the most fun wins of the season. I feel like we've had a bunch of those in the Smoothie King Center this year where it's just like they play amazing. They win by a ton. Everybody goes home happy with a big smile on their face. But then Saturday, Sunday, and Friday, if you go back and look at it, Dallas went 0-2. They lost to a Philly team that doesn't have Joel Embiid. Phoenix went 0-2 on the weekend. This is going back to Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Phoenix went 0-2. They lost to a Houston team that pretty much never wins on the road in Phoenix, and then they came back and lost to OKC last night. In terms of 9th and 10th place right now, Golden State lost by 52 to Boston on Sunday.
I'm sorry?
Yes, 52 points, Gus. And the Lakers lost on Saturday to Denver, so the Pelicans are now 3.5 games ahead of the play-in danger zone between Golden State and the Lakers. They both added to their advantage on them. And they're also now, Pelicans have sole possession of 5th place. They gained a game and a half on Dallas just over the last 3 days, as well as Phoenix. So, you could quibble maybe here and there. Sacramento had a surprising win at Minnesota on Friday. That was the only game the Kings played over the last few days. But other than that, it was amazing. If you were scoreboard watching the way I was and the way I know Graf was, because I was texted back and forth with him a little bit. You couldn't ask for much more. It was an incredibly good weekend for the Pelicans in the standings.
Oh, there it is, right? Let's try that again. No, there it is. That's what I was trying to get out. That was record scratch. I didn't realize that the Lakers lost that game. All I know is that LeBron had 40,000 points. They lost.
Kind of reminds me of when he broke.
I had no idea they lost the game.
When he broke the all-time scoring record against OKC.
Yeah. They won that game too, didn't they?
We may, on this podcast, I think we provided thorough coverage of the fact that the Thunder won that game and the Lakers lost. But I think we might have been the only media entity across America that noted that, oh, by the way, the Lakers didn't end up winning this game.
It was a loss. No doubt about it. So, yeah, but in all honesty, though, look, again, when you look at the amount of games that remain, and there aren't very many, we're down to 20? Right? Is that where we are?
21.
Is it 21?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, it's 21. So we're 36 and 25, which if you do the math, it's 51 minus 82, right? Is that right?
61?
61. That's what I meant. Minus 82. See, this is why I have you on here as well. Bottom line's 21.
Right.
So you do have 21 games left. And look, there's a lot of basketball to be played. So, 2 games doesn't mean anything. 3 games doesn't mean anything. But I want to start checking boxes off at some point. And one of those first boxes you want to check is that 9 and 10. And I don't know, Jim. Obviously, again, we keep referring to the final 11 games that this team has. It's a killer homestand against really good teams. And then you got
straight at home.
Yeah, and then you got a tough road stand, road trip as well. But that homestand starts March 26th, later this month. Thunder, Bucks, Celtics, Suns, Magic, the Spurs, who Wemby's playing out of his mind.
And
He had 31 yesterday. Yeah, they're starting to look really good. So, the point is, you're going to have to win that game.
Right.
And then you go on the road right after that. Suns, Trailblazers, Kings, Warriors, Lakers. I don't see how the next 20 games, the Warriors and Lakers aren't going to be battling for 9 and 10. 8 or 7. So those games, I think they're going to matter is what I'm getting at. I think the Kings game is going to be a standings game that matter. The Suns game absolutely is going to be a game that matters. Celtics and Bucks, those are 2 really tough teams, and those are 2 teams that are probably trying to secure that 1 or 2 seed up there. The Thunder's trying to be the number 1 seed. So the point is, out of those final 11 games, Jim, 9 are standings games.
Right.
Like other than the Spurs and Magic. And I mean, look, the Magic are trying to be in the postseason too. I mean, when you look at the standings where they are, they're also in the hunt to try to, do something they haven't done before. They're in the 6th seed right now. So that game is for them, just like the Pelicans, trying to stay out of the play-in scenario. So never mind. 10 of the final 11 will come against teams that are absolutely looking to battle in the standings.
It's funny when you lay it out that way. It makes me think too that
Does it make you nauseous? Does it make you need
a little
some
bit.
Pepto?
But I also think that it makes it, to me, the next 10 games of the 21 even more important. So when you head into that last stretch of 11 games where you have 6 at home, where you laid out, how tough that's going to be in terms of opponents, the 4-game road trip, and then you end with game 82 back in the Smoothie King Center against the Lakers. So going into those last 11 games, what position are the Pelicans going to be in? It would be really nice to have a little bit of a cushion, have a little bit of breathing room as far as whether that's games ahead of 9th and 10th place or games ahead of even 6th place. Right now, the Pelicans are in 5th and they're 1 game ahead of 6th. Can you add to that? Can you create a little bit more separation between you and specifically Phoenix, Sacramento, and Dallas are the 3 teams that have been right kind of in the same tier as you? So, I mean, I think that's something that we should definitely follow and pay attention to over the next 10 games. How many of the next 10 can they win? And what position can they be in going into the last 11 where you say, okay, we have the next 6 games at home and we hope to do really well, but it's not going to be a disaster if we go 4-2 or 3-3, so on and so forth. So, next stretch, obviously every game is super important. And even over these next, I mean, it's funny the way the schedule is too. They only play 3 games between now and March 13th when they start that 3-game homestand against the against Cleveland.
Some rest time.
And even more tangibly than that too, you're only playing 3 games over that stretch, but all these other teams are playing a ton of games. So I'm curious to see if you can kind of you pile up some wins on this road trip, win a couple games, maybe hopefully win all 3, and you just watch these other teams beat up on each other. And I think even by Sunday night after they play Atlanta and wrap up this road trip, that maybe you look at the standings and say, boy, this was a really good week for us.
They're all important. But is this road trip the most supreme important business trip of the season because of what you just said? Now hear me out. Philly is currently the 5th seed in the East, 13.5 back of Boston, but they don't have Joel Embiid. Now, they've won some games in the last couple of days, right? So, I mean, it's still a
really
good
good win against the Mavericks that helped the Pelicans yesterday.
Technically, they're 5th in the East. However, different team without Joel Embiid. Toronto, 3 games out of the play-in. That's a team that got rid of Pascal Siakam.
Scotty Barnes is out now too.
That's what I was going to get to.
Their best player is
broken
out,
hand
All-Star
on Friday. So he is out tomorrow. Then you get to Atlanta. Trey Young is injured, right? I think he's out for the season. Now they're 10th, so they're battling to stay in and all that. But point is, these next 3 games, while you're playing 2 currently in the postseason standings and one's on the outskirts. Look, Toronto has beaten some teams in the West. I think they beat Dallas, didn't they, or some of that? They beat a team recently.
Yeah,
last
they've had
week.
some decent wins. They've been I think going back up, but now that they don't have Scotty Barnes, it's going to be tough to keep that up.
But that's my point is though. The next 3 games, you're playing teams without their main guy, right? Joel Embiid in Philly, Trey Young in Atlanta, and Scotty Barnes in Toronto. Can those teams still win? Absolutely.
Sure.
Do you have to show up? Absolutely. But Jim, back to what I'm saying. If we can get those 3 games in, while those other teams in the West are playing one another, as the graph has pointed out, so they're playing a couple of games in a couple of days while you're spacing out. If you can knock out 3 wins this week, man, I think it'll go a long way. But a week from today, we could be like, hey, the Pels have opened up a 3-game lead, on 7. I just think
that would be huge.
Me, I know they got practice today. I know they get on an airplane and head to Toronto. Like I'm harping. I'm like, you have your fun, but this has got to be like get a room service in or whatever. I mean, get the massage, whatever gets you locked in. You have got to get these 3 games.
And the way this lays out, I mean, there's really no excuses. It's not like the recent stretch where they played 6 games in 9 days and they played a back-to-back that turned into a nightmare with the travel issues.
Yeah.
I mean, in this case, you're going to be in Toronto today by the early evening. You play them tomorrow. Then you have 3 days before you play Philly. And then you have, all these are relatively short flights. Then you play Atlanta on Sunday. So I'm with you. It's interesting, too. We never want to see injuries. And to your point, just because a team has their best player out doesn't mean anything. The Pelicans have won a bunch of games this year when they've had key guys out or even multiple of their starters or top scorers sidelined. But it does feel like the teams the Pelicans are playing right this week, the Pelicans have been on that side of the coin so much in recent years that it is interesting that it just seems like they're finally on the side where they have the healthier team and they have the healthier roster. But like you said, it's something that they're going to have to take advantage of over these next 3 games. And I can guarantee you that if they are able to pull off winning all of these games on this road trip, when we sit here next Monday, the conversation is going to be even more optimistic and enthusiastic because, like you said, it's inevitable that some of these other teams are going to lose, especially with the head-to-head games where someone has to lose. But this weekend, I don't expect every weekend to be like this as far as great results on the scoreboard. Right. But, I mean, even if you get a little bit of that, you're going to be looking in really good shape.
It's nice to actually have a little bit of some good, I don't know, good vibe, good juju, good something for the Pels team to be.
They're due. They're overdue for that.
They really are.
Yeah.
We didn't bring this up because we're not playing them just yet, but it is something to keep an eye on because I saw that this morning and I actually sent it to Aaron Summers and Graf. I'm sorry if I forgot you. I thought I did. But Devin Booker being out. Right? He's got an ankle injury.
They said 7 to 10 days. Shams just minutes ago reported he's going to be out 7 to 10 days.
So what I sent this morning was they were going to evaluate him, because there was no timetable. No timetable isn't he's back tomorrow. So again, I'm not saying you want injuries, and you just said that as well. Mm-hmm. But if the Suns don't have that guy who's been their primary ball handler, and as people have been telling me, they have a high level of turnovers. They've lost some games, but you don't have that. Durantula's Durantula, but that's a team that doesn't have that depth. That's a team that doesn't do that because they had to trade for Beal and trade for, all those pieces. So, again, this business trip, there's 3 games between now and next Monday. If you can do that while they're waiting for Book to recover and get healthy, and you can... the Suns are right there. They're right below you, So, they're a game behind you and the Kings as well. And you got that series on the Kings. I'm just saying it's something to keep an eye on for people listening today. The Suns are going to be without Devin Booker for at least a week. Jim said 7 to 10 days per sham. So,
and I'll tell you what, a quick note on the Suns specifically to the near future. The timing of Booker being out, I don't think could be any worse because of their next 5 games. So between tomorrow night when they are at Denver in March 14th, which is 10 days from now. They play Denver once, the Celtics twice, and they also have a game at Cleveland. So this is not only not having Devin Booker, but also maybe, I don't know how you could draw up a tougher stretch that among 5 games, they have 1 against the defending NBA champions and 2 against the Celtics, who are just tearing up every opponent that they've been facing lately. So, yeah, not good timing. So that's another thing we'll keep an eye on is the Pelicans are 1 game ahead of Phoenix, but after this stretch, if they can, the combination of things that we'd like to see, maybe they can finally get a little bit more to where we don't have to get nervous every single game that's played, that maybe they can get a little bit of a gap between them and the Suns.
I mean, the Celtics twice in the next 4 games. I mean, good luck with that.
Yeah, really.
Hey,
thanks.
Like I said, thank you, Mr. Commissioner. All right, it's Monday, so Jim, that means one very important thing.
Yes, the Player of the Week poll has been posted on Twitter. And before I go through the results, I wanted to mention a comment from @Neil_Engine, who tweets a lot to me and comments a lot to me, pretty avid Pelicans fan. His question to my question about who do you want to vote for as Player of the Week was, can't we vote for all of the above options for the whole team? So it was a very good week. There were so many different players that excelled. But right now, if I look at the poll, it's almost 11 a.m. on Monday morning. Brandon Ingram has 72% of the votes, so things are looking pretty good. Maybe not all precincts reported, but yes, I think we might be ready to declare. Yeah. But, I mean, some of the other options, Herb Jones had averaged, he was basically plus 55 plus minus, which, I mean, that's pretty darn good over only 3 games. He's got 15% of the votes right now. Trey Murphy averaged 21.7 points per game. CJ McCollum was 9 for 15 on threes, which is 60%. So there were so many different guys that played well and got you the win at New York and then the home win against the Pacers. So things are trending really well for a bunch of these guys. And so that's the Player of the Week poll. I gave people 24 hours to vote in that. So if you're listening to this and the poll's still up, feel free to comment or vote on who you think should be the winner of that. And then lastly, my player to watch this week. And I'm cheating a little bit because I'm picking two guys for this, okay? So my players to watch are Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. And the reason for this is based on the opponents of who they're playing against. Gus, do you remember what Mr. Brandon Ingram did the last time that the Pelicans played against the Raptors?
I do not.
He was 8 for 11 on three-pointers and scored 41 points in that game. And I think, if I remember correctly,
that was the 8 3-point game.
Yeah, that was the 8 3-point game, and he only played 3 quarters. So, I mean, he maybe was on his way to a 50-point game, which would have been the first of his career, but it was such a blowout that they didn't need him to play the last period. And then Zion Williamson had 33 points against the Sixers in December, or I think it was November, and was 11 for 11 from the field. So that might have been the best offensive game he's played this season. So picked him because of the game, obviously, Friday against the 76ers. And in the game against Atlanta, very early in the season, he had 25 points and was 9 for 16 from the field. That was actually the game that CJ McCollum got his collapsed lung and was injured in. It really wasn't a great night for the Pelicans overall, and they ended up losing that game. But Zion did have a really good night against the Hawks. And so between the two starting forwards for New Orleans, every game that has been played against the Raptors, Sixers, and Hawks, one of those two guys had a big night. So those are my players to watch. Brandon Ingram against Toronto to see what he can do if he does even anything close to what he did the first time against the Raptors. I think we're looking at a very good night in Canada. And then Zion against the Sixers and the Hawks to close out the week.
Well, easy enough. Jim Eichenhofer, Pelicans.com. You're not going to Toronto, are you? Well, I guess you'd be over there ready to go.
I'm not, but I kind of wish I was because it's the closest NBA city to where I grew up. And so I kind of always joke that that you're from kind of the middle of nowhere if the closest NBA city to you is in another country. But yeah, it's about 3.5 hours from where I grew up. So wish I was there, but I will not be there. I will be enjoying the game on TV.
I'm not completely familiar with everybody's offices here because, I just started, hanging out here in this building and I'm always stuck in this room. But where's the travel up there? Second floor, Doug, all those people I got to go talk to. We're going to do an expose. I mean, not an expose, like one of those outside the line pieces.
Okay.
Something like that. Nice camera angles, some music. We have got to go revisit where you tormented high school basketball players by absolutely bringing injury upon them. There's some kids that probably didn't sleep at night knowing that Eichenhofer was coming out there. I have got to revisit you being the sheriff of Frontier Justice. I'm not letting that go. It's the greatest thing ever on Friday. I must have told that story to so many people. I'm like, did you know that Eichenhofer literally admitted he went in to hack away?
Well, that wasn't my plan, but when the other team started just dribbling out the clock, and I was like, I haven't played in a while. I don't think I want to sit here and just watch you dribble.
To earn dribbling the time, running out
I want
the clock.
The ball, and the only way to do that is to foul the heck out of you. So,
it's the best ever. It really honestly is.
We'll do that sometime. It sounds maybe that might be an off-season project, a summer project. The weather's a lot better in New York in June and July than it is in February and March. Trust me on that one.
Oh, I mean, when I tell you that brings so much joy to me. It really does. I mean, that's essentially like telling a kid on the mound, "Hey, we'd be up or we down, but you were throwing inside and you're brushing down brushing off the batter."
It wasn't malicious, Gus. It was just I wanted to play some basketball. I wasn't trying to hurt anybody, and I didn't hurt anyone.
Let them know that the unwritten. We got to do another show here as well about the unwritten rules.
Right.
I gave you some homework. People don't know this, but I gave Jim Eichenhofer homework. I said, hey, from here on out, just ask a player like a day or a practice or after a game.
Maybe I'll do that today.
Yeah, just pick a player and be like, give me one basketball unwritten rule, and I promise, buddy, maybe it'll be our postseason podcast because we're going to the playoffs, folks. We're going to go to the playoffs. So it's one of those things where, there's going to be a couple days in between, right? Because the play-in's got to go.
Hopefully, if you're not in the play-in, you get from that Sunday game against the Lakers all the way until the following weekend, Saturday, Sunday.
I see how you brought the Lakers in that.
Just a coincidence, Gus.
Again, you won't even know that that's a play-in game, though, if LeBron's playing. Unbelievable.
Right.
40.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. That's Jim Eichenhofer. Give him a follow on X, Jim_Eichenhofer, and of course, right here on New Orleans Pelicans, the official podcast. When we come back, we will see you on Wednesday and hopefully talk about another Pelicans win. So long, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, the iHeartRadio app, or where you get your podcasts. And be sure to give Jim and Gus a follow on X at Jim_Eichenhofer and GCat_17. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Pelicans Podcast.